I was not ready for the findings to be that significant.
Same.
I was ready for it to be like, no, it doesn't help you.
Yeah, it does seem to be.
Everyone listening is like, good, I'll continue to not do that thing I already was not doing.
I'll now just do lighter squats before I do squats.
But now we can release the guilt. That's what
true.
we'll do. We'll release the guilt of not stretching.
This episode is just for Kate to feel better about not stretching. Yeah.
It's awesome. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the How to Fitness Podcast. I'm Kate Lyman.
And I'm Michael Ujoa.
And we have a deep dive today. Michael, tell us what we're talking about today.
So, as the title of this episode kind of rudely gives it away, today we're talking about the science of stretching. And I don't want to sound dramatic, Kate, but this one, I got a bit stressed out researching this one.
I know. Your texts were like, help. What am I doing? Why am I doing this?
The thing is, stretching is so core to like so many fitness things, right? Like everyone talks about stretching. We all do it, or we're told we're supposed to do it all the time. So I was like, right, the research is going to be pretty solid. This is why we do it. Here's the benefits. And it just wasn't. I think it's probably the hardest one I've researched because there was just so much conflicting advice. So I'm glad we're here. I'm all prepped, ready to go, but it was a process.
I am really excited in that I know nothing. And that is not ideal to say as someone who's worked in fitness for many a year. But let me tell you my flawed take. I personally don't like stretching, so I hope you say it's not important.
Okay.
That's my take. It's like, please validate me, Michael. I hate it. Validate me.
It's funny you say that because it's quite a common thing you hear, right? I kind of sit in that camp. I will touch on this shortly in a second as well, but I learned so much from doing this. And I actually, weirdly, in the last couple of days, I've had a lot of people asking me questions about stretching. And I'm like, oh, okay, I actually know what I'm talking about.
Gear up for my answer.
No, yeah, gear up. I'm nerded up on this one. It's a very cool topic. Maybe it is quite straightforward once you realize what the main bulk of the research is saying, but getting to that point was quite challenging. But yeah, I hope that the people are going to enjoy this one, actually. I think it's an important topic, so I'm excited to get stuck in.
At least I am. You have one rapt listener right now, and that's me.
Okay, thanks, Kate. That's all I need. Just you. As long as you're happy, Kate, I'm happy.
I'm happy. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. Today we're talking about stretching. So I also did just want to alert the listeners on this one that we're nerding out on a lot of research papers today. So the research nerds, Kate, I know you're in this bracket, are going to love this one. However, I will try and summarize the findings nicely as we go as well, so that those who are maybe a bit less intrigued by the intricacies of research papers will stay there with us and won't kind of wander off and think, what is he talking about, nerd? So hang in there, folks. Please hang in there. It's a good episode. But yeah, you're right. So with stretching, it's funny because there's always two camps, right? You usually hear one group who absolutely loves it and does it all the time. And they're the folk in the gym doing the splits that everyone's always like, oh, I wish I could do that, but I don't really want to spend the time to reach that point. Or there's the group, which I'm going to admit, Kate, I sit in as well, which I mostly ignore it, or at least neglect it way more than at least I thought I should have been before. So I was going to ask which camp you're in, Kate, but I think I already know from your intro.
Yeah, the second one. But I'm curious if you share this experience where, like, if you do it, you're like, oh, that's really nice. I should do this more, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
That's my take. I'm like, oh, I went to a dance class just as this 2 days ago and we stretched a lot to get started. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is really nice. I think my back's been killing me. Like, I think I really needed this. And then that was the last time I stretched 2 days ago when I was forced into it.
Yeah. Do you know what? Life is so busy, and like fitting in enough time to actually work out and move your body is one thing, but then setting aside like extra time to do mobility work, especially when you've got a really busy schedule, it just feels like the easy thing to kind of nudge out to the side.
Absolutely.
But I don't enjoy stretching. But I will say I used to be really, really flexible. This is maybe another little known fact that you didn't know about me, Kate. I feel like in the last few episodes we've learned a lot about each other that we didn't know. I did kickboxing for like 7-8 years.
No way. Okay.
I rarely ever talk about this. I don't know why. But yeah, and I used to be able to do the splits and kick like well above head height. And then I just stopped doing kickboxing and stopped doing all the mobility work that came with it.
Wow.
And now I'm inflexible, which should be my middle name really. Like I'm just nowhere near what I was before.
Wow. Okay. I'm pretty shocked that you did kickboxing. That's something I've never done, like not even a class or anything. I've never dabbled in it, but it sounds fun.
It's really fun. I didn't enjoy fighting, ironically, which sounds really stupid. I used to do competitions like every week. I'd enter into competitions to fight people.
Whoa. Okay. Where'd this come from?
But I was a lot younger. I stopped when I was 15, 16, so it's a little while ago. I didn't enjoy fighting though. Clearly a lover, and I don't like punching people in the face or being punched in the face, which might not surprise people.
That's fair.
But I really enjoyed the fitness side of it, and the flexibility and mobility work and stuff was great. And it was probably the thing that kickstarted my love of fitness. So I should probably talk about this a bit more, really.
Well, I mean, Also, you were a child and it's a lot easier to be flexible when you're a child.
That's also very true.
And then we sit at our desk like this and become like, "Rrr."
Yeah, then just life takes over
Yeah, exactly.
and we just hunch ourselves over a desk forever.
All right, teach me. I'm eager to hear if I need to stretch more.
Okay, so you've probably heard things like you have to stretch before every workout or you'll get injured, or stretching will make you stronger and improve your performance, or stretching helps muscle soreness go away faster. Like all these common things that we hear regularly. But how much of it is actually true? And in short, not much of what I just said is, but there are kind of caveats to that. So I think today's episode is actually going to surprise quite a few people. And I think our listeners' approaches to stretching might actually change quite a bit after listening. I'm hyping this up, right?
Yeah, no, I'm getting really excited.
I need to make sure I deliver on it, right? But yeah, as I said, I learned a ton going through the research for this one. So I hope that the listeners enjoy it. So the way that I'm going to do today is I'll just kind of describe the different types of stretching that are out there, whether stretching prevents injuries, how stretching impacts performance, and then if stretching actually does help with recovery or soreness at all. And then we'll just do our usual what actually works and what we should be focusing on at the end of every episode, Kate, where we try and make it sound all sexy and exciting. So whether you're someone who stretches religiously or someone who skips it altogether, stay with us. I think you might rethink your approach a little bit after today. So first of all, what is stretching? Let's start with the basics and what the different types are. So most people think that stretching is simply like lengthening of a muscle, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. And there are actually 4 main types of stretching. There's static stretching, which is holding a stretch in one position for a certain period of time, so like sitting down and reaching for your toes, for example. Then we have dynamic stretching, which is controlled movements that take your joints through the full range of motion. That can be anything from like arm circles, leg swings, that kind of stuff. Then we have ballistic stretching, which is where you use momentum or bouncing to push beyond your range of motion. This is usually used before bouts of like high intensity interval training, so before sprinting, for example. I will put the disclaimer on this one that the risk of injury is way higher with this type of stretching, so it's not usually recommended for most people or the everyday exerciser, and I kind of put us in that bracket, Kate. It's more for those kind of higher performance athletes that are doing it really controlled conditions. And then you have PNF stretching, which is proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. Sounds really fancy, but it's simply like stretching and pushing against the stretch. So it's stretching whilst contracting and relaxing muscles whilst doing it, and it's usually done with a partner. So yeah, those are the 4 very quick summaries of what each of them are. So most people only do think of static stretching, but actually dynamic stretching, looking through the research, tends to be the one that we should be putting a little bit more of an emphasis on.
Ooh, I feel a little validated there because that's the only type you'll catch me doing.
Perfect. It sounds like you're mostly on the right track, Kate. As we said, you'll see professional athletes doing this all the time when they're doing the pre-game chat, and you'll see the players on the pitch doing dynamic stretching. They'll rarely be standing there kind of bending down, touching their toes, right? It's all kind of lunges, high knees, arm swings, that kind of thing. So they're basically preparing the body for the movement they're about to do. But yeah, we'll do more on this shortly. So the one thing, I was like, do I put this in here? But it felt a little bit silly not to include it. But the research does show that stretching increases the range of movement in a joint. I feel like I had to say this. So yes, stretching has an impact.
I think that's important though, because it's really easy to be like, oh, it doesn't matter at all. This doesn't even do anything when you're like resisting doing it.
Yeah, I think so.
I say that knowing that I feel that way sometimes.
Yeah, right. I know, right. Exactly. So yeah, like stretching here has an impact. Like if you want to have a greater range of movement in your joints, which is really important for sporting performance, right? If you can work the joint through the full range of movement, you're more likely to be able to have the kind of power and whatever to use the muscle effectively. So yeah, stretching is important. I will link the research paper in the show notes for anyone who wants to read the research paper confirming that stretching does stretch the muscles. It does do it.
You know, there's someone out here who wants that though. So good job.
Yeah. Do you know what? I enjoyed reading the paper, to be honest, but that's just me.
Good.
So that's the important bit cleared up. So stretching improves the range of movement, but let's now tackle some of the contested claims. I also, a slight disclaimer, my dog is in the room with me, Kate, and if anyone hears a light snore,
Daisy,
whilst we are doing this episode, it is not me, it is the dog. It is Daisy. She's very happy, and I will not dare move her. Yeah, she looks really, really cute.
I can't hear her yet.
Okay, just let me know if she starts piping up a bit loud, and I'll kind of give her a gentle nudge.
I will.
Okay, so actually, first of all, there was a really cool survey, which I contemplated not putting in this episode because I don't want it to be viewing as me like shitting on other practitioners, right? But I actually don't think it does because like we both said at the start of this episode, we don't really know the research behind stretching, despite it being supposedly quite a foundational thing when it comes to exercise. And I think a lot of practitioners would would probably admit to saying the same things as well. So I think it simply highlights the unknown and the widespread confusion around stretching benefits rather than criticizing practitioners. So it was a survey asking 117 exercise and health professionals, and they consisted of physiotherapists, sports scientists, and coaches, and they were all attending a training convention in Austria. And they were asked about what their overall thoughts were on stretching and its impact on all the different factors, like the things we're discussing today, like performance, injury prevention, soreness, etc. In only 10 of 22 items, participants' classifications were in line with the scientific evidence. So only 10 out of 22 on the items they were actually correct with. They came to the conclusion within the survey that awareness of research findings on the effects of stretching among exercise and health professionals is, quote, alarmingly low.
Yeah, that makes total sense with what you found, because that's how I feel exactly. I feel like exercise physiologists that I pay attention to have said, it's so important for this way, blah, 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 this reason. And then the same exact thing from also very reputable exercise physiologists in the industry, that it doesn't matter. So I would be in that camp of,
I'd be in, yeah. I'd be in the, oh God, I got it wrong camp after they got the survey results back. So I just thought that was really cool. So I wanted to put it in there just to highlight that even the people that are giving the advice are quite in the dark of what actually works. So hopefully us and the listeners after this episode will be able to champion the right way of stretching.
I have a question for you, and I don't want to get too off topic, but this was a really, really big thing in the CrossFit world, which I know you're not a part of. Do you know of Kelly Starrett and Supple Leopard and his books about mobility?
I recognize the name, but I don't know anything about them, so I'm not going to lie that I do. Yeah.
That's good enough that you know who he is. He just is this massive proponent of mobility work. He might actually work for CrossFit. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I don't know. But his work was really, really influential in CrossFit. And so I think mobility is a main tenet of the CrossFit, whatever. I was supposed to have it memorized, but it's been so many years. But anyway, there was a period of years where as trainers, we incorporated so much Kelly Starrett mobility work. And I'm sure I felt good doing that. And somehow I just stopped and then didn't think about it until literally this moment.
Yeah. That's interesting. I wonder if it's still there as kind of a foundational part of it.
I'd say so, but I haven't been to CrossFit in so long. So I don't know. Someone who's listening, who's still in the CrossFit world, pipe in. I'd love to hear.
Yeah. Please do let us know. I will check this stuff out after this episode because I am intrigued. Okay, right. Should we get into the myth-busting side of it then?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the first point of contention is, does stretching prevent injuries? And this was the most difficult bit to kind of find an answer on. And to say that the research is contradictory or at least equivocal or uncertain would be a bit of an understatement. I would arguably put this up there as one of the biggest myths. Maybe not myth, maybe misconceptions within fitness.
Wow, okay.
And I'm not saying there's no benefit at all to limiting injury risk, but I think the sweeping statements of stretching reduces injury risk is high up there within the fitness myth category. And because it's entirely context dependent. Also, I think what a lot of the research seemed to come to the conclusion with was one of the issues is the definitions around the types of injuries and the types of stretching protocols means that it's actually really difficult to give definitive results on injury prevention. But once again, a bit more on that shortly. So as always, I'm going to link to the research. You'll probably see in the research, in the show notes, quite a lot of research links on this one. So I will chuck everything that I'm quoting from into the show notes for anyone to look through. But one systematic review of the literature around stretching and whether it prevented injuries said the following: there is not sufficient evidence to endorse or discontinue routine stretching before or after exercise to prevent injury among competitive or recreational athletes. Another systematic review showed that even though all forms of stretching showed clear improvements in range of movement, static stretching and PNF, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation stretching, had no clear effects on all-cause or underuse injuries. And another one, just to kind of back that up, another study highlighted that there is no scientifically based prescription for flexibility training and no conclusive statements can be made about the relationship of flexibility to athletic injury.
Wow. So it's a big shrug.
Yeah.
All of that is
Yeah, exactly.
I'm thinking literally of the shrugging emoji. That's what I'm hearing from all of this.
It pretty much is. So it's not looking too promising for more static forms of stretching. So let's flip it on its head. There was actually a research paper. It was on military recruits in 2003. So it's quite an old study and quite small. But a lot of other papers seem to echo the findings of it. And I'll just quote the study below. So a total of 901 recruits between 1996 and 98 were divided into two groups, of which 518 were assigned to the stretching group and practiced static stretching before and after each training session. The controlled subjects did not stretch prior to exercise. The total injury rate was almost the same between two groups. However, the incidences of muscle tendon injury and low back pain seem to be significantly lower in the stretching group. So static stretching did decrease the incidence of muscle-related injuries, but did not prevent bone or joint injuries. It just kind of highlights that there's like so much contradictory. It's like, well, what bit does it actually improve or work with? There might be some small benefit to some certain groups or certain injury risks or like lower back pain example, but it's so context dependent that it's really difficult to be like, this really helps, because we just don't know.
That makes me think that, and I'm eager to hear your recommendation, is just so person dependent too. If someone feels like, ooh, when I do some static stretching before my workout, I feel way better, then do that.
Yeah.
Then don't listen to the research saying, oh, that doesn't, it's like, do that.
There is an element of that, right? It's like what we've described in the past, what kind of Laurent Bannock does, who from the Institute of Performance Nutrition, he always talks about like evidence-led practice rather than evidence-based practice. Like use this research and be like, okay, it's probably really limited in the benefit for X, Y, and Z, but actually I feel really good, and that can actually have such a huge impact and might have some benefit to me. I think the stretching research highlights exactly that, of these are all just little tools, these things that we're talking about today, and if you think it fits with you and your exercise regime, then use it, and if it doesn't, then don't. And I know that's really difficult to manage when you're just like an everyday exerciser that's not really sure what you're doing, but I think that's just fitness and nutrition, right? There's just no right or wrong.
It's true. Figuring out what works for you and conduct your own little experiment. Stretch before. Don't stretch before. See if you feel different.
Yeah, but we will touch more on the implications of it in a second. So just to briefly summarize, because this episode could literally just be that one topic I spoke about, and because there's so much contradiction, the main body of research highlights that although it might have small benefits in specific scenarios, static stretching mostly doesn't impact injury risk. So if injury prevention is your main goal, static stretching prior to exercise is probably not the one. So what about dynamic stretching for injury risk? So remember, this is the stretching that has controlled movements of the joint, taking it through its full range of movements, so like arm circles, leg swings. Once again, the research is incredibly frustrating here, as many authors will not differentiate between dynamic stretching or dynamic warm-ups, which is something kind of completely different, but the findings are pretty much the same in isolation. However, when you put together a more elaborate warm-up, so dynamic stretches or dynamic warm-up, where we actively prepare the body for the movement it is about to do, there does seem to be a positive impact on injury prevention. I would always argue that a dynamic warm-up, which includes some dynamic stretching, is always going to be beneficial prior to movement. And I'll touch upon why a bit further in a minute, but this sounds like what you do before your workouts, Kate. Like the dynamic work you're doing before a session, it probably does reduce your risk of obtaining an injury. So it's definitely worthwhile keep going with it.
Thank you. Cosign. Dynamic warm-up is the way to go.
Okay. Kate just gave me a big thumbs up, so I feel happy about that. So yeah, that kind of awkwardly summarizes a really messy area of research. There was a paper, which I loved the name of it. It was Stretching and Injury Prevention, an Obscure Relationship.
I love that.
And it states stretching recommendations are clouded by misconceptions and conflicting research reports. And we believe that part of these contradictions can be explained by considering the type of sports activities which an individual is participating in. Sports involving bouncing and jumping activities with high intensity of stretch shortening cycles like football or American football, I want to note that I didn't say the word soccer, require a muscle tendon unit that is compliant enough to store and release the high amount of elastic energy that benefits performance. If the participants of these sports have an insufficient muscle tendon unit, then sometimes like the demands of the power and absorption may exceed the capacity of the muscle tendon unit. And that seems to be the belief of where the injury comes from. Just really messy, but the title of that summarized it perfectly.
An obscure relationship. Was that what it was?
An obscure relationship. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. There we go.
Maybe we'll add that to our title.
Yeah, maybe we will. Maybe we should. It was quite funny. I know there's people going to be listening to this because I still am, even after reading all the research. I'm not like fully sold on exactly what is the right way in terms of injury prevention, but I think it's probably not static stretching. As soon as you're about to exercise, if you want to reduce your injury risk, do some sort of dynamic stretches along with a warm-up to get your body ready for the movement you're about to do. And that seems to be like the general consensus.
Love that. I think that feels clear to me when you sum it up that way. As clear as can be.
I think so, yeah. So next is, does stretching improve performance? And this was one I actually really enjoyed this bit, because I think this might be the bit that changes people's approaches to stretching, because I think most people do mobility routines or stretching routines because they want their workouts to be better. I don't think a lot of people are actually thinking about injury prevention a lot of the time.
Agree.
I might be wrong there, but I know I don't really. I just like, oh, how can I lift more weight? Let's do some mobility work so I can lift more, right? Okay, so let's talk performance. So a lot of people think stretching before a workout makes you stronger, faster, or more powerful. But the reality is, in short, like it entirely depends on the type of stretching that you are doing.
My ideal workout would start with a dynamic warm-up that includes dynamic stretching. How often does that happen?
I won't tell anyone, Kate.
Don't tell anyone.
So there are two types of stretching people usually do before a workout, and that is once again like static stretching or dynamic. So let's start with static stretching. The research seems to point towards static stretching before a workout either having no impact at all or actually having a detrimental impact on sporting performance. So just to reiterate that point, because it's like the most important part, I think. So static stretching either has no impact or actually has a detrimental impact on your performance. So one research paper was set up to examine whether a static stretching routine decreased isometric force, muscle activation, and jump power. And after static stretching, there was a significant overall 9.5% decrease in the torque or force of the quadriceps for maximal voluntary force. So not only that, but the force remained significantly decreased for around 120 minutes after the stretching session too.
Bias confirmed. Static stretching sucks. Good. I won't do it.
Other research papers just echo the findings too. Like another meta-analysis summarized it nicely with, our results clearly show that static stretching before exercise has significant and practically relevant negative acute effects on maximal muscle strength and explosive muscular performance.
I was not ready for the findings to be that significant.
Same.
I was ready for it to be like, no, it doesn't help you.
Yeah, it does seem to be.
Take it or leave it. But that's significant in favor of not static stretching before. So, wow.
Yeah, I just wouldn't. So now from doing this episode, my recommendations will be don't do static stretching before a workout.
Everyone listening is like, good, I'll continue to not do that thing I already was not doing.
I'll now just do lighter squats before I do squats.
But now we can release the guilt. That's
what
true. We'll do. We'll release the guilt of not stretching.
Yeah.
Love that.
That needs to be in the episode title too. Don't feel guilty anymore about not stretching. So in short, like static stretching is a bit of a no-go. So what about dynamic stretching before a workout? In short, it helps activate muscles and improve range of motion. So a 2018 review of the literature into performance and physiological changes following dynamic stretching came up with the following findings, okay? So there is a substantial amount of evidence pointing out the positive effects on range of motion and subsequent performance. So that's kind of force, power, sprint, and jumping. The larger range of movement would be mainly attributable to reduced stiffness of the muscle tendon unit, while the improved muscular performance to temperature and potentiation related mechanisms caused by the voluntary contraction associated with the dynamic stretching. There we go. So therefore, if the goal of a warm-up is to increase joint range of movement and to enhance muscle force and or power, dynamic stretching is the way forward. It seems to be like the suitable alternative to static stretching.
Cool. I love knowing that.
So we just want to get the muscle warm. We want to work it through its full range of movement so it's ready to go. And dynamic stretching, as the research shows, has a really positive impact on the exercise that you're about to do. And I think clear practical examples here, which is always quite nice for people to visualize it, is like Olympic sprinters. You never see them sitting down and holding long stretch before a race, right? It's because it reduces the stiffness if they were doing static stretches and therefore could increase injury risk potentially and could remove some of the explosive power. So instead they do drills like skips and little kind of short sprints, and this prepares the muscles for movement without negatively impacting the force creation.
Have you watched the show Sprint on Netflix?
I haven't. It always pops up and I really want to watch it.
Oh, it's so good.
Is it good? Okay, I will watch it.
I don't know. I like all of those sport documentaries. In fact, I just finished the polo one last week.
Niche.
I literally didn't even know what polo was until I watched this thing. I was like, oh, horses? Anyway, that's just popping in my head. Like the Sprint one, they spend a lot of time showing their warm-ups and it is 100% always dynamic.
I love that. That is very niche though.
If you want to be Noah Lyles, do dynamic warm-ups.
There we go. Sold. Yeah. I was going to say, I'm from the southeast of England, so I know what polo is. I've never done it though, so I just want to highlight that. I love those sport documentaries. You also recommended that movie to me of the swimmer across from Cuba to Florida.
Oh, yeah. Miami.
Miami. So what was the name of the film again?
Naiad.
That was literally her name. Yeah, good. Perfect. Yeah, that was a really good movie.
Sorry, off topic.
I think we're just going to do that a lot on this episode, Kate. But yeah, the key takeaway is like dynamic stretching, good, thumbs up. Static stretching before a workout,
Boo.
Thumb down, not so good. That seems to be the general consensus there. And then, yeah, so Kate actually sent me a really cool video by Andy Galpin on stretching when I frantically messaged her how stressed out I was about the research on this topic. And the video was awesome. If anyone wants to find it and read through it, he goes a little bit deeper into some of the research here. So he was talking about whether there are any exceptions to these general guidelines, and he did come up with one. If someone is pretty tight or has a limited range of movement, therefore they struggle to keep good positioning throughout the movement. So if we think about a squat, for example, if they get into the bottom and kind of the back starts to round and their range of movement isn't great, we would perhaps rather they do some static stretching beforehand so they can keep in a good position throughout the entire movement. So even if it means that they drop a little bit of that kind of 5% power or so, the good form is there, and good form always comes first. So that was one I thought was quite a nice little exception there that I thought people could take away from this.
That makes sense because that's totally hand in hand with injury prevention, right? This is not stretching causes injury prevention. It's stretching in order to reinforce better movement patterns is injury prevention.
Exactly. Yeah, nailed it. So I thought that was kind of a cool little one that I thought. So yeah, thank you to Andy Galpin and his really cool video for adding that one there.
I'm glad you watched it. You texted me like, I don't know what's right. And I was like, what does Andy Galpin say?
Yeah, literally, yeah. I was like, yeah, that's cool. That works. It was really good. It reinforced the way that I was going. I was like, okay, I'm on the right track. Andy Galpin agrees with me. So yeah, let's move on to the kind of third point here, which is, does stretching help with soreness and recovery? And this is one that you hear all of the time, right? Like, oh, I'm feeling a bit sore, therefore I'm going to do a bit of a stretching session tonight. When you do brutal workouts, like if you have soreness kicking in, do you stretch to limit it or not?
Nope.
No. Okay, cool. I love that you're as bad at stretching as I am. That's good. This makes you feel so much better.
I feel like I'm not
Kate.
a good example here.
Do as
all.
we say, not as we do, Kate. That's it, isn't it?
I'll like complain about it before I'll stretch.
Yeah. That's fair. I'm the same. The research continually shows that post-workout stretching doesn't significantly reduce muscle soreness. So does not significantly reduce muscle soreness.
Look at that.
This episode is just for Kate to feel better about not stretching. Yeah.
It's awesome.
A systematic review into the effects of stretching both before and after exercising on muscle soreness found that stretching before or after exercising does not confer protection from muscle soreness at all. So it's pretty conclusive with that. The other research was a bit easier to read on this one.
To be fair, I have baseline knowledge of the body and such, but it doesn't make sense to me that stretching would necessarily decrease soreness. But I'm going to pretend like I knew the research the whole time and that's why I wasn't doing it.
You did. You told me about it earlier. You knew the research, Kate. So if your muscles feel tight after a workout, stretching might feel good. A lot of people say that it feels good to stretch off, and a lot of research does actually show that in the moment it reduces feelings of soreness, but it has no longevity past the stretching protocol. But I actually wrote a blog piece on this a little while ago on my website. I hope you don't mind me plugging a hit, Kate, on my website. It was called Discover the Best Pain Relievers for Sore Muscles After a Workout or something like that. I did like 2 or 3 months ago. And the only things that really have some benefit are active recovery, so low intensity movement like walking, cycling, something like that, just a lower intensity. Sports massage actually had a really good impact. This was found to be one of the better forms of muscle soreness relief. Also, which I don't like to say this because I really hate foam rollers. For some reason, they just really grind my gears. Some of the health claims you hear around them, they actually are quite good for relieving muscle soreness.
It's like self-sports massage, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Proper nutrition, so like enough protein, carbs for muscle repair, like very minimally, but it might have some impact. And then 2 of the most underrated recovery tools are always sleep and hydration. But once again, I think if you've got muscle soreness from a workout, a lot of the time it is literally just got to ride it out.
Walk it out. That's my go-to.
Yeah,
is walk it
it'll
out.
help.
But I see that stretching provides that temporary pain relief, and maybe there's even a placebo effect. Like if you feel better after, then like go for it. Yeah, I get it.
Placebo is so powerful. I think a lot of coaches poo-poo the placebo effect on a lot of things, but do you know what? If something works for you and it's not causing harm, just do it. You know, if you're happy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And honestly, who of us can afford a sports massage after every workout? Or the time for a sports massage? We got to do what we got to do, you know?
Yeah, exactly. If you've got one of these little massage guns, so you can sit there and massage yourself or whatever. But sports massage was one of the best ones, but not the cheapest way to relieve a little bit of muscle soreness. That's kind of like the main summary of all the misconceptions around stretching. I wanted to see what the common questions were around stretching, and I thought I'd just kind of quickly fire those at people. So the first one was like, should I stretch every day? And I think like the general guidelines in terms of stretching is, because we know that static stretching, for example, is good for increasing range of movement, which can have some benefits. I would say you can kind of do it as often as you want, but just try and keep it as far away from the workout as possible. So if you want to do it every day, sure, nothing bad will happen because of that. But usually my recommendations to clients, especially it will be now, is if you could just set aside some stretching throughout the week occasionally to help improve range of movement, then I think it would be wise. But you don't necessarily have to do it every day.
Love that. I like the recommendation of while you watch TV, because you still get to watch your TV and it's like you're already sitting. Why not do a little stretching? Now, I say that knowing that I don't do that, but
Yeah, see, that's when I very infrequently do it. It is when I'm watching TV.
yeah.
Because I kind of feel like I'm not doing it because I can take my mind off it.
Yeah.
So then in terms of what is the best time to stretch is the second most asked question. And then just feeding back to what we've just learned is before a workout, no static stretching, focus on dynamic stretching to prepare you for the workout. And then in terms of static stretching, just as far away from the workout period as possible, because we know that it might impact performance and it can do for minutes/hours post stretch too. So just try and keep it as far away from the workout as possible. And then one of the other most asked questions was, is yoga the same as stretching? I think it completely depends on the type of yoga that you're doing. The yoga that I enjoy is like long static hold stretching because it feels less tough. So if you're doing that, then yeah, that works as a good stretching session. But others tend to be a little bit more kind of like strength and control focused.
Yin yoga is the stretch, that the one you like, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. The one where you get to fall asleep at the end.
That is static stretching, right?
Yeah.
So don't do that around your workout. Noted.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, many of the research reviews came to the same conclusion that more research is needed into the area. So I just want to really echo that. But there are just so many different factors that it becomes really difficult to give a clear conclusion when it comes of like what's good, what's bad. As I mentioned, like the takeaways there, like stretching isn't a magic fix for injury prevention at all. Dynamic stretching before a workout is better than static, and stretching probably won't speed up your recovery. It's a very kind of quick-ish summary of stretching.
I think that's great. I learned a lot. For real. Good job. Good job.
Thank you very much.
I think there's some really good takeaways here. I said this kind of tongue in cheek earlier, but I actually believe like this can release some pressure of like, we always feel like we have to do all of these things, right? And it's like, okay.
So true. Mm-hmm.
Look, if you're not static stretching, you're probably fine. Just go drink some water instead. Like, obviously that doesn't equal out, but like there's things you can focus on that are far more impactful instead of feeling bad that you're not doing all the things.
Completely agree. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I actually do feel a bit of relief after doing this. I'm like, okay, I don't feel as awful about neglecting an area of fitness that we're told we have to do it all the time before or after a workout. Like, you don't.
I think of the two of us, Michael, as busy parents trying to fit our workouts in, and I assume that's a lot of our listeners too. It's already hard enough to get the bulk of your workout in. So feeling like, oh my gosh, I also have to spend time stretching before or whatever that looks like, or after, it feels like such a barrier. And it's like, okay, well, we're learning that maybe we can just eliminate that barrier. Do your dynamic stretches instead and call it good. I love it.
Job done.
Good job. Good
Thank
job.
you so much. I feel such a relief. I'm like, whew, Christ. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this one. It was way harder to research than I thought it would be, but actually really quite enjoyed the challenge for it. I hope the people listening to this will feel relief and a bit more informed into how they can build more movement into their weekly practice. But if you have any questions, as always, let me know. If you do want to nerd out on the research papers, as I said, look at the show notes. There's going to be a ton of research papers for you to look through if you're of the research paper persuasion. But any questions, just shout.
Let me just share with our audience that we just last week learned how to see the questions people were submitting.
Yeah, we did.
On Spotify.
Yeah.
So if you listen on Spotify and you've been putting little questions in our question box, sorry. We learned how to see it last week.
We literally did. They've released like a new podcast app and I'm like, oh, look, there's these questions from a year ago. Someone was asking us on a podcast episode. So I'm really sorry if we've ignored those. But yeah, we will see them now. I get notifications to my phone when they come through. So if you have any questions, throw them in and we can either I'll answer them via text back to you or we can answer them on a future episode.
Good job, Michael. This is a great one.
Thank you very much. So yeah, thanks so much for listening, guys. Just to once again highlight, we are recording these for YouTube as well. So please search for the How to Fitness podcast on YouTube if you want to watch along, or if you enjoyed the episode, please like it, subscribe, share it with anyone who you think will love the episode. Yeah, we welcome feedback. If there's any topics you want us to cover or anything you want to know about Kate, I, or the episodes that we're creating, please just reach out.
Thanks for listening. Talk soon.
See ya.